Hey everyone, I'm Suraj, one of the co-instructors for DSC 10, and in this video, I want to show you some tips and tricks for working with DataHub and in Jupyter notebooks in this class, DSC 10. So first, really quickly, what is DataHub? You can think of DataHub as being a virtual computer that every student in the class has, where you run all of the code for this class. And the benefit of that is you don't have to install Jupyter notebooks and all of the packages and libraries that we're going to use on your own computer. We'll install those for you on DataHub so you can get right in and start working. Another thing to keep in mind with DataHub is that since these sort of DataHub servers are individual to you, nothing you do on DataHub is going to affect anyone else's work on DataHub. So you can think of your DataHub as being just unique to yourself. Okay, so how do we access DataHub? Well, there are two ways to do it. One is by clicking any of the links on the course website, and another is by going directly to datahub.ucsd.edu. Let me show you what happens when you click a link on the course website. So let's say I want to look at lecture 3. I'll click this link, I'll open it in a new tab. Sometimes I might be asked to log in. And when I do that, it will bring me to the notebook that I clicked on. Now, sometimes when you click on a link, it will show you a menu that kind of looks like this, though there may be fewer options here. Make sure to always click the one that says DSC 10. That's just so that we can ensure that you have the right software installed on your DataHub so that you'll be able to do everything we need in DSC 10 without any issues. So if you ever see this menu, click the one that says DSC 10. Okay, that likely will be the only option that appears anyways. Okay, and so that brought me to this notebook, and we'll talk about some tips for efficiently using notebooks in a little bit, but now I'm at the Lecture 3 notebook. But what would have happened if I went directly to datahub.ucsd.edu? Well, then it kind of brings me to the top level directory, or you can think of it as the home page of my DataHub. So this will show me and give me a way to access all of the files and folders that are in my DataHub. And actually, you can access the same menu by clicking the Jupyter Hub button in the top left. So when I click this Jupyter Hub button, it brings me to the exact same place. Okay, so when you do this, and you go directly to datahub.ucsd.edu, you will likely only have one folder in there, and that folder will be named after the quarter in which you're taking DSC 10. Now, if you're watching this in fall 2021, that folder will be called DSC 10-2021-FA. But if you're watching this in, say, winter 2022, this will probably say DSC 10-2022-WI. Okay, and so that folder is where all of your work will live. Now, you can add other folders to your DataHub if you want to work on files for another class or do something for fun, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second, but just know that all of your work will live in this folder. So let's click it and see what we get. So you can see that I have folders for the discussions, the homeworks, the labs, the lectures, the midterm project, this will happen even if you haven't clicked some of these links before. So maybe you never attended discussion before and you never clicked one of these discussion links on the course website, like discussion 1, discussion 2, discussion 3, and discussion 4, there isn't even a link yet, so you wouldn't have clicked it, but it still appeared in your DataHub. And how is that? Well, it's important to talk about how these links on the course website work. What these links do, suppose I click the homework 2 link, what it will do is bring in a copy of all of the course materials so far into your DataHub, and it will point you directly to the homework 2 notebook. So regardless of which one of these links I click, it's still going to copy all of the course materials so far and put them in my DataHub. It'll also just bring me to the notebook that I specified. Now, one thing I'll point out is that you don't have to worry about losing any of your work. One of the core design principles with how DataHub works is that you're not going to lose any of your work. So suppose you work on homework 2, save it, come back the next day, you're safe to click this link or click any of these links. It's not going to erase any of your progress with homework 2. So you can consistently click any of these links and not worry about losing any of your work. So, suppose I've never Suppose I'm not even in DSC 10, but I happen to click one of these links. What it will do, suppose I click the Lab 2 link, it will copy everything that has come out so far in the class. And I'm recording this on October 16th, 2021. So it'll copy everything that has come out in this class so far, up until and including whatever we release on October 16th. And it'll put that in your DataHub. And it will open Lab 2 for you. So that's how all of these files end up here, even if you don't click specific links. Even if you didn't click the midterm project link, for example. But suppose, in a week or something, I want to look at lecture 14. The lecture 14 notebook isn't going to magically spawn in the lectures folder here, right? In order to bring copies of newer material into my DataHub, I have to click those links. So every time a new assignment comes out, I have to click one of these links again. You're probably just going to click the link of the assignment in particular to bring a copy of it into your DataHub, and then you can work on it from there. Okay, so every time something new comes out, you have to click one of these links on the course website. And again, don't worry about losing your progress. That's not going to happen on DataHub. Okay, before we look at tips and tricks for how to work in Jupyter Notebooks, I want to show you how you can make your own Jupyter Notebooks and upload your own files if you have data sets that you want to analyze. And we encourage you to do that. So let's first make a new folder. The way you can do that is by going to New up here and clicking Folder. That will by default create this folder called Untitled folder. I'm going to go here, rename it to Demo of DataHub. Actually, that's a terrible name. I'm going to call it Data Scientist Salaries, because that's the data set that I'm going to bring in. The folder name doesn't really matter. I click this and it'll bring me to an empty folder. So I have a .csv file. Remember, CSV stands for comma separated values. I have that file on my desktop. You can see it here. It contains information about data scientists and their salaries. And let's suppose that I want to use that CSV file as a data frame in Baby Pandas. How do I get this file from my computer onto my DataHub? Well, I do that by uploading it. So if I click Upload over here, it'll allow me to choose any file from my computer. So I'm going to click Data Scientist Salaries.csv. Boom. Click Upload. And after a little bit, you know how UCSD Wi-Fi is slow? Now it's on my DataHub. But I need a Jupyter Notebook to go along with this. And so to make a new Jupyter Notebook, I just go to New, and then I click Python 3. I click the clean one. You might want to call this something like Data Scientist Salary Analysis. Now your notebook has a name, and now you're good to go. And you're in an empty Jupyter Notebook. Well, what do you do now? Well, since we are looking at a CSV file, we might need to work with Baby Pandas. But by default, Jupyter Notebooks don't know about Baby Pandas, so we have to say import Baby Pandas as BPD. And I forgot the as. There we go. So now I can say bpd.readcsv. I called my file data scientist salaries.csv. And now I will have it as a data frame. Now, if this .csv file was in another folder, like for example, if I, had a data folder here, and I move this .csv file into the data folder by specifying that's where I want its new location to be, I would have had to say data / here. Notice if I run this cell again, it's going to say that file doesn't exist. There is no file called data scientist salaries.csv because it's looking in the same folder that my notebook is in. And in the folder that my notebook is in, that CSV doesn't exist. Instead, I have to tell it, go look in the data folder for that file. So here I would have to say data / data scientist salaries.csv. Okay. So then you can have fun and make whatever visualizations that you want to. Okay. And we encourage you to do that. Lastly, let me show you some tips and tricks for actually writing code and working with the autograder in this class. And to do that, let me open up an old homework assignment. Let's look at homework 2, for example. Okay, Now we have the homework 2 notebook open. One thing you'll notice is that the first time you're working on a particular assignment or notebook, there will be no output after any of the cells, and there will be these empty square brackets to the left of each cell. And after you run a cell, and running a cell is just telling your Jupyter notebook to read and execute all of the commands that you've put in a cell, there will be a number that appears here. Now there are 2 ways to run a cell. One way is by clicking this run button up here. Now you can do that, but I strongly encourage you not to do that, okay? Because it's far more time consuming than the alternate, which is hitting Shift and Enter on your keyboard, okay? Just so we're crystal clear, this is the Shift key, this is the Enter key. You click those 2 things one after another, and it'll run a cell. Please do that. Don't click the run button up here because it takes way too long. Okay, so when I'm working on a homework assignment, I, do whatever I'm supposed to do. I'm not going to type the right answer here because, maybe we use this problem next quarter. And after that, I run my cell to see, what I defined this array to be. And then I run the cell greater.check Q11 to see if my code was right or not. Okay, in this case, it said it's passed. Clearly, it's not actually right because it doesn't satisfy any of these conditions. But in homework assignments in this class, the tests that you get to see in your notebook don't tell you if your answer is right or not. It just tells you if it's in the right format. Okay, labs, it'll actually tell you if your answer is right or not. But this is a homework, so this is just saying, okay, you made an array and you were supposed to make an array. If I made this like 4 or something, it'll say, we were expecting this to be an array, and it wasn't. Okay, these error messages are quite helpful. Now, a common issue I see is students going to run the greater.check cell without having run this cell first. And let me illustrate to you how that might happen. Now, if you step away from DataHub for a few hours or for a whole day even, when you come back to your notebook, it's going to forget all of the cells that you've already run. It's not going to delete them or anything, but you can think of your Jupyter notebook as having short-term memory. Right now, it remembers all of the commands that I've executed, but after a few hours or after a day, it's not going to. So I'm going to have to rerun all of these cells again. Now, to simulate the act of your notebook forgetting everything that it knows, or to force it to forget everything it knows, what you can do is restart the kernel. When you restart the kernel, it's going to forget all of the variables you've defined, it's going to forget all of the code you've run, and you're going to have to run all of that again. So now, notice I just restarted my notebook, but nothing has changed visually, right? This still all looks the same. But if I go to run greater.check, it's going to say greater is not defined because I told it to forget everything it already knew, and so it forgot what greater means. And notice that's only defined up here. So you'll see this behavior a lot, and the way to fix it is by running all of your cells from the very top. So when I do that, now I'll get another error because my code isn't right, but if I at least get it in the right format, it'll at least say that it passed. Okay. Now, I personally strongly recommend not ever using restart, but instead saying restart and clear output, just so that it's visually clear that your notebook forgot everything that it already ran and that all of the outputs have been cleared. Before you submit an assignment especially, you should either restart and clear output and manually run all of your cells, or go to kernel and restart and run all, and it'll essentially do that for you automatically, right? And in this case, I went to restart and run all. I was trying to tell it, okay, go and run all of the cells in my notebook. And now it's just showing me an error message for every cell because, I didn't actually do any of the assignment yet, okay? And we'll go all the way, it'll run when you use restart and run all, up until the first point it actually gets an error message. Now, there are errors within my test, but that's different. Here, the notebook itself errored. It said ellipses object has no attribute index, and so it stops running everything under. Right? So now here, none of these cells actually got run. Okay, let me show you a few handy tips for actually editing cells in a Jupyter notebook. So the first is sometimes when you're working on a problem, you might want to make an additional cell where you can experiment before assigning the variable that you're asked to. And so the way to add an additional cell is you can go to Insert and then either click Cell Above or Cell Below. So here I can click Add Cell Above. I can click down here again to highlight this cell and then Insert Cell Below. So now I have 2 new cells. And then I can go in here and edit them and say, I don't know, x is equal to 4 or something. Okay, great. There's a shortcut for adding new cells above and below, and for deleting cells. And I'll show you some of them, but what you should really know is that there's a way to see all of the shortcuts at once, and it's by going to Help, Keyboard Shortcuts. Now here, it'll show you all of the keyboard commands that Jupyter, that DataHub knows about, and you don't have to memorize them, but you should be aware of some of the key ones. Shift-Enter is like the most important one, but here are some other ones. But notice here, it's kind of differentiating between something called command mode and something called edit mode. Let me tell you a little bit about that. Now notice here, this bar next to my cell is blue. This is telling me I'm in command mode, right? And if I type the letters A, B, C, I didn't see A, B, C appear here anywhere. Instead, it was interpreting the keys A, B, and C as being keyboard shortcuts. A makes a new cell above, B makes a new cell below. That's why 2 new cells appeared here. If I instead actually want to write code in my notebook, I have to click inside of it. And so now this bar has turned from blue to green. And so when I type ABC, it's not going to interpret that as a keyboard shortcut. It's going to say, okay, I'm writing code. How do I go back to command mode? Well, I can hit the escape key on my keyboard or just click outside of the cell. Click inside of the cell. I'm in edit mode. Now I'm in command mode. Okay, so the moral of the story is, in order to use the keyboard shortcuts for adding new cells above and below, you need to be in command mode. Another shortcut for that you might want is for deleting cells. And to do that, you can type DD really quickly, one after another. So I hit DD again, it'll delete this cell, DD again, delete this cell. The way to undo that is by clicking Z. So now this cell will appear again, Z again, that cell will appear again, so on and so forth. But again, you don't have to try and memorize them all. They're all here in the help menu, right? You can see Z, undo cell deletion, A, insert cell above, B, insert cell below. It's all here. Okay, and I believe if you go to the edit menu, it'll also show you the relevant shortcuts. You can also use, I believe, the scissors button to cut a selected cell, and then you could paste it somewhere else if you wanted to. We don't do that very often, but the functionality is there if you need to. Now I'll show you one more command, and that's how to stop a cell from running after you've already told it to run. Now it might not be immediately clear why you would ever need to do this, but let me show you anyways, because soon in the course you'll likely need to use this at some point. Okay, so don't worry about the code that I'm writing. Okay, so whatever this is, I ran it, and instead of showing a number to the left in these square brackets, it just has an asterisk. When you see an asterisk there, it means your cell is running. Now, most of the code we have in this class won't take that long to run, maybe a few seconds max, so it's clear that something is wrong with this cell. And the way you can tell it to stop running, because if one cell is running, I can't go and run other things, they'll also get delayed, is by going to kernel and then interrupt, or if I do this again, I can hit this square button here. Both of them tell my cell, okay, stop running, let me look at my code and see what's wrong with it. Okay, so if you ever see an asterisk stuck in those square brackets, you'll want to interrupt your kernel and try and figure out what's wrong. Okay, another really important thing to do when working with Jupyter Notebooks is to save regularly. Now there is autosave, and generally it's reliable, but I personally don't like to put all of my trust in that. I like to be confident that the work I've done has been saved regardless of what happens. And so just like working with a file on your computer, to save it you can hit Command S or Control S if you're on Windows, or you could just hit the floppy disk button, and it will tell you up here when the last checkpoint was, which is another way of saying when the last time you saved it was. Now, before I saved, if you go back like 30 seconds in the video, you'll see that this used to say 13 minutes ago, which means the last time I saved it was 13 minutes ago. Now I've saved it a few seconds ago, so that's what it says here. So do this early and often. The last piece we should discuss is how to actually submit your work. Now, you'll always want to go follow these instructions and go to kernel, restart, and run all once you're done an assignment. You'll want to make sure that greater.checkAll passes. They're all failing for me because I didn't actually do the assignment, but hopefully they'll pass for you. Then you'll want to download this notebook as a .ipynb file. Now, I've noticed a lot of students save their work on their iPad, which is totally fine, but when they download it on their iPad, it gets saved as a .json file. I think I figured out a solution, and the way to do it is by going to this Jupyter Hub menu, navigating to the folder where your assignment is, going here, you're gonna have to click shut down to tell the notebook to stop running, and you can download it from here. So I believe if you're working on an iPad and you download your notebook this way, it'll save as a .ipynb file instead of a .json file. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, I believe those were most of the key commands I wanted to show you. Remember, the help menu has almost everything. I guess one more menu that I should show you is the cell menu. So if you've just opened a notebook and you're working on question 4 and you don't want to manually run all of the cells from the top to question 4, what you could do is go to question 4 and click run all above. That's pretty efficient. But that should be about it. If I've missed anything, feel free to let me know and I can add it to a future version of this video. And of course, as always, feel free to post on Campus Wire with any questions.